first of all, the data is like, as mentioned by Sir Noriel, is like the gold right now. So losing your data, having it compromised, having it at the influence of any foreign actors might cause you to lose, of course, lose money, lose credibility. And that's why in terms of the factor that the securing this data and keeping it sovereign within our control would, of course, prevent those losses from happening.
ASEC has mentioned a very important policy, which is the data sovereignty law, or I call it data residency law. So this mainly allows us to, or mainly mandates to repatriate majority of our data, all of our data within the Philippines. You know, there's a risk currently because our data is being exported, processed outside the Philippines to foreign nationals. If you look at geopolitics, you know, this data can also be used against the country. It can help the entire economy of the Philippines if they forbid us to access our data, which we don't have much control because it's sitting outside the country. So having the right policy guardrails, like ASEC has mentioned, is one of the way for us to not only secure our national interest and also asset, but more importantly, it will drive investment and innovations here in the Philippines.
Future of connectivity.
We're redefining what Converge can do.
Expanding innovation. It's not just about products, it's about partnerships, innovation, and delivering beyond expectations. Let's innovate. Let's grow. Let's converge.
In today's world, digital infrastructure powers the digital economy, connecting people and services through networks of fiber optic cables, satellites, data centers, and cloud platforms. For the Philippines, building such infrastructure is now a national priority. Through the National Digital Connectivity Plan and the $288 million Philippine Digital Infrastructure Project, the government aims to expand fiber backbones, lower internet costs, and increase the household broadband adoption to 60%. Private companies, likewise, are also helping bridge the digital gap through further investments to develop their networks. According to global advisory firm Access Partnership, digital technologies could generate up to 5 trillion pesos in annual economic value for the Philippines by 2030. However, significant challenges remain, from connecting underserved areas to managing complex networks. This is where the digital world converges. Conversations on Cloud, a series of BusinessWorld B-side episodes in partnership with Converge Global Business. I am your host, Beatrice Cruz, multimedia reporter for BusinessWorld. In our second episode, we will explore why digital infrastructure is essential for the country's future industries, how investments and collaboration can accelerate connectivity, and what stakeholders must do to ensure that the Philippines does not fall behind in a world powered by data and technology. Joining us to tackle all that is a distinguished data center and infrastructure leader and a newly appointed government official who represents the Department of Information and Communications Technology. First, we have Noriel Ong, Vice President and Head of Data Center Infrastructure at Converge. With over 20 years of global experience driving mission-critical projects across the Middle East, Africa, Europe, and Asia, he now leads the digital infrastructure strategy of Converge, which includes hyperscale-ready data centers, sovereign cloud initiatives, among others. Also joining us is the ICT Assistant Secretary Christian Mark G. Guingcangco. A lawyer and certified public accountant by profession, he now spearheads the implementation of the Free Public Internet Access Program and oversees the operations and maintenance of the government's network infrastructure. Sir Noriel and Asa Christian, welcome to Business World B-Side. Thank you for being with us today for this interview. And I just wanted to start with, well, it's safe to say that the digital economy is our future because so much of our operations and productivity depend on it. What makes digital infrastructure a pillar for today's economic activity and service delivery? And how does the strength of the country's digital infrastructure influence its competitiveness in the global digital economy?
So I think for me, the digital infrastructure is already the backbone of the modern economy. Yeah. So if you look at every businesses, if you look at the way we live on a daily basis, it's all depend on the digital infrastructure. And as you have mentioned, digital infrastructure is one of the reasons why businesses and professional improves their productivity and efficiencies. That is a very important pillar and aspect of any economy because if the productivity is very low and efficiency is very low, then the economy becomes very slow. And that's the reason why I believe the country's competitiveness will definitely rely on how well the digital infrastructure is established.
Got that, sir. Aside your inputs from the government side.
Perfect. So right now, we are at the digital age. So basically, before the olden days, we were building roads and bridges to move around goods and services. But right now, we are using, we're building digital infrastructure, basically the information highways, to move around ideas and capital. So with that, we were projecting at least a 5 trillion. There's a study that projects at least 5 trillion in terms of annual revenue or because the improved productivity by using these digital infrastructures to move around ideas and basically improve productivity. So in a sense, basically, we expect a store, for example, in Manila or what have you, even in rural areas, you used to cater to, of course, their kapitbahays, someone from their own communities, can now sell to someone from New York. They can sell their goods and products to New York. So that alone improves really the capabilities, and it means that it really creates that it really transforms this to the digital information to a pillar that's critical in our country's economy.
I like what you both mentioned about digital infrastructure being the backbone of keeping our digital economy running, because we know that the global digital economy is really growing. Everyone is going digital, so it's really important that we stay connected with the digital economy of other countries. Now, in terms of digital infrastructure, so it consists of what we know are multiple interconnected components, both physical and virtual. So these include your data centers, your 5G networks, fiber optic cables, Internet of Things. So how do these different layers of infrastructure work together to create a reliable ecosystem? And what is the importance of having a unified digital infrastructure ecosystem?
So for Converge, we look at different layers of digital infrastructure. So we call it the national digital infrastructure. So the foundation at the base, we have our terrestrial network. These are the fiber networks that runs across the country. So these are the main highways to transport data from one island to another or one location to another. And then that's the second layer is our gateway. So the gateway acts as the main connectivity of the country, of the Philippines, to other nations. So this is our subsea cables. It allows us to transport data and process data from one nation or one country to another. And then the third layer is mainly our data centers. So this is what we call the vault. This is mainly the heart of our information exchange. So this is where the data is processed, stored, and also distributed. So this is also where we secure our data. So our data center is also secured. It has multiple layers of security, both in physical and also in virtual or called cybersecurity. And finally is the platform. So the platform allows us to work on the data. That may be the cloud, that could be other digital services that we can offer to the consumers and even the businesses. And all this has to work together to function. What if one of them fails, everything falls apart. And that's the reason why it is very important that this system are completely integrated to perform its function.
Sir, just wanted to follow up. You mentioned that data centers are the heart of information exchange because this is where data is processed, stored, and distributed. So what is the role of data centers in establishing the Philippines' growing digital economy?
So it propels the digital transformation. Without data centers, you won't be able to process, you won't be able to store significant amount of data. Especially in these days where AI and machine learning is a trend. So the Philippines must also look into investing in this kind of infrastructure in order for us to catch up. We have to also appreciate that the data is the new gold and oil. So data is our national asset. And that's really important for us to take care of. And that's the reason why data centers, if you look at the data centers globally that follows best practices, it's very secured. It's very secured and it's considered mission critical. It has multiple redundancies and backups because data is like money. It's gold.
Yes.
And it's an asset that we need to protect.
Got that, sir. For ASEC, off-cam, we were talking about how, of course, when you work in government, there's still a problem of siloed data, which is very critical given that, of course, government services is important to serving the public. So what is the role of having a unified digital infrastructure to be able to serve the public's needs?
Okay. In terms of the connectivity, first and foremost, this serves as a critical physical layer. So the fibers and the towers, and then the virtual layer is the cloud and the other AI services, or basically the system. So the e-government act right now mandates that these layers must be unified and work together. They must be able to talk to each other and to ensure that the outcome is met. So one of the key examples here is even if you have the best and fastest smartphone that has that you can access to basically use AI, access cloud, perform systems and other services that are digital, but you don't have the infrastructure, basically don't have the fiber, you don't have towers there, then you won't be able to access it. You won't be able to to use it to be intended, use it based on how it is intended to be used. So that's in the government. We are critically crafting policies right now to ensure that this infrastructure that we're investing on the physical layer really would interoperate or ensure that it will be used, or it will be, yes, interoperable with our virtual layer. So in the government, even if we operate in, even if we did manage to digitalize, even if we manage to develop the one virtual layers, if we lag behind in terms of the physical layer, then as mentioned by Sir Noriel, that everything should go together. Everything should be at the same time so that we can achieve how we really intend to use it.
Got it, sir. Now, I wanted to go on the challenges. What are some of the most pressing difficulties that network providers face in expanding digital infrastructure nationwide? And how can these obstacles be addressed? And for coming on the side of Converge, what are some of the bottlenecks or issues that you see in it?
Yes, there are a few issues that I've observed. Mainly for our infrastructure, for example. I think one of the major challenges for infrastructure development is the right-of-way issue. And so that's number one, especially when you lay cables underground or aerial and you put the poles. The right-of-way issue is the first, I would say, due diligence that you have to look at. So, the second challenge would be the permitting process. So it's a very long process. And so maybe because of the workflow, the way the permitting has been designed, and all of those must be addressed. So how we can address that? So the government plays a very important role in this, for the right-of-way issue, especially if we're talking about a critical infrastructure. Yeah. So in other countries, some governments have, I would not say it's a special, a process designed for the critical infrastructure, such as data centers and also the fiber and network. So this type of infrastructure, just like our major highways, our skyways, these are national critical infrastructure, and it should be given priority. So the government would play a very important role here to look at the framework, see if what kind of solutions we can set to overcome these challenges. I'm sure the government's already looking at this actively, but I think if we have a one-stop shop process for national critical infrastructure development, and we can set that framework and also workflow, working with also private sectors, hearing their challenges, I believe we'll be able to resolve these challenges.
To follow up, sir, how do these challenges hinder the addition of more data centers in the country? As you mentioned, a data center is already considered critical infrastructure.
So for the data centers, it would be very similar, but I would say there would be a lot more challenges beyond this. So one is mainly the cost of energy. Yeah, so our energy cost in the Philippines is very similar to Singapore. We're not that competitive in comparison to global market, right? So if you look at other nations, so our energy is a little bit, well, not really, it's quite higher, significantly higher. So in order to resolve this, one of the things that I see is through PPP, right? So public-private partnership. And of course, incentivizing in other countries like the tier 1 markets or the developed countries like in the US and Europe. So government supports and incentivize this type of development. So aside from easing up the permitting process, so they do have also incentives, whether it's going to be a tax holiday. In the Philippines, we have this also through the BOI. Tax holidays, and potentially also subsidizing the energy cost, or through integrated development. Because data center development is not easy. It's a very complex project and development to do. So it requires a lot of stakeholders. So if we partner together, for example, all of the pieces, yeah, from the government, from infrastructure developer like Converge, and also utilities, I believe we will be able to overcome this energy challenge, and also will be more competitive, because if you develop data center along with the utilities and power plants, then a lot of this losses that we normally pay through the energy distribution would be optimized, and most likely going to be cut down.
So it has to be a good partnership with all stakeholders involved
Indeed,
to really
yes.
Address all these challenges. Now,
Indeed.
Asek, from the government's perspective, you've heard all the challenges that Sir Noriel mentioned. So how is the DICT looking to address and streamline all these challenges and bottlenecks that could hinder the addition of more data centers in the country?
Okay. Yes, in the ICT, we launched, or we are championing Konektadong Pinoy Act. We recently launched the IRR. And in addition to that, we are also championing the National Digital Connectivity Infrastructure Master Plan for the Philippines. So with these two policies, we encourage it from being the gatekeeper to become the gateway. So basically, we're granting these our stakeholders a ease of accessing or getting these permits, and for us to start digging if it is an infrastructure, or so right now in the government, because we recognize that as well. Currently, since in connectivity, we're deploying in some sites or that we require. Of course, we have to coordinate with the other departments, other municipalities, for us to be able to get that permit, to even work permit. So essentially, the Konektadong Pinoy and the NDCP intends to become the gateway, give the fast lane to us and to our stakeholders as well.
Got this. And you've mentioned that your expertise is connectivity, and that's related to my next question. We know that access to connectivity remains uneven, especially between the urban and the rural areas. But connectivity is pretty important for the public to access data that is coming from, of course, our digital infrastructure or data centers. So what strategies can help to close the digital divide and expand reliable connectivity, especially in underserved areas?
Okay. So for that, I would agree that PPP might be one of the good options. It was also stated in the NDCP that for us to essentially deploy an infrastructure that will be maintained and operated long term, we need to involve the private sector to help us out and tap their expertise on that. So the government can build the infrastructure, can help in, so it's essentially a 60-40, 60 private sector, 40 government. So government will clear the way so that the private sector can fill in and maintain that. So currently, we understand that the private sector might not find it feasible to reach these far-flung areas right now via fiber or other modalities or technology. But that's where the government steps in, because we ensure that there's no Filipino left behind. So we'll provide the infrastructure, and then we partner with them to, of course, operate and maintain it and ensure that you can build from that. It's like we build the house and then they fill it with, they ensure that they fill it with furniture, basically.
Got that.
Yeah, I would like to add. So, of course, ASAC mentioned about different types of modality, right? So, at Converge, we have all of these technologies. So, from fiber to wireless microwave satellite antennas, and with the low Earth orbit satellites, for like Starlink, for example. So, these are the types of technologies that we could potentially consider in order to connect everyone throughout the Philippine Islands.
Speaking of regional and nationwide connectivity, Sir Noriel, Converge just opened their latest data center in Pampanga, so outside Metro Manila. So with that, how can data centers help bridge the digital divide that's still existing today? What actions is Converge also doing to better cater to underserved areas?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the data centers just the third layer of the multi-layer infrastructure. So in order to serve the other underserved areas, so it's really critical that we integrate all of these layers together. So from data centers, of course, the data center will, as I mentioned, it's going to be the heart of the digital infrastructure, which process, store, and distribute technology. But more importantly, it enables digital services that can be utilized and used by the consumers and also the businesses, including the government. Now, in order for the data center to function very well, then this is where the network system comes into the picture. And in order to connect every Filipinos into the digital space, then you definitely need the network infrastructure, maybe through fiber, microwave antennas, or LEO satellites. You will need all of this infrastructure to be put in place to be able to connect every Filipinos throughout the Philippines.
Got that, sir. Now, I wanted to go on policy. What kind of policy frameworks must be in place to support innovation while protecting data privacy and digital sovereignty? Maybe
Okay.
Isaac, you might want to chime in
So
on that.
it's like the innovation is, you can treat it as like it's the vehicle, it's the car, and privacy is a seatbelt. So in the current landscape right now, we use policy to ensure that we innovate. There's a cloud first policy in the e-government act, and it mandates the government stakeholders to become more to use these tech to become more agile, but deploy deploy guardrails like the seatbelts in terms of the privacy, because we believe that the data of every Filipino is of the national interest. So we have in the various policies right now in Konektadong Pinoy and NDCP and in e-government act, among other policies or regulatory frameworks that ensures that we innovate with the proper seatbelt. So that's the current. But right now we could have more probably in terms of because we're majority of our data are hosted maybe offshore yet, but we're moving towards, of course, hosting it in the Philippines. But right now there's a push for I believe that there's a push in data sovereignty, in terms of data embassies, data localization, and we're crafting that. We're ensuring that it doesn't. Of course, these would serve as a guardrails that will not hinder our innovation.
I wanted to follow up on that. What is the role of data localization in terms of building the country's digital economy?
Well, in terms of, first of all, the data is like, as mentioned by Sir Noriel, is like the gold right now. So losing your data, having it compromised, having it at the influence of any foreign actors might cause you to lose, of course, lose money, lose credibility. And that's why in terms of the factor that the securing this data and keeping it sovereign within our control would, of course, prevent those losses from happening.
God, that's right.
So maybe I can add also, because ASEC has mentioned a very important policy, which is the data sovereignty law, or I call it data residency law. So this mainly allows us to, or mainly mandates to repatriate majority of our data, all of our data within the Philippines. You know, there's a risk currently because our data is being exported, processed outside the Philippines to foreign nationals. If you look at geopolitics, this data can also be used against the country. It can help the entire economy of the Philippines if they forbid us to access our data, which we don't have much control because it's sitting outside the country. So having the right policy guardrails, like ASEC has mentioned, is one of the way for us to not only secure our national interest and also asset, but more importantly, it will drive investment and innovations here in the Philippines. So the Philippines is not the only country who has to go through this process. In fact, many countries around the world has gone through this process. Even in the Middle East, back in the days, they don't have that kind of data sovereignty law. But now they do have Singapore and other nations. So they all have this data sovereignty law and policies. In addition, we also need to consider our local codes and regulations for such infrastructure. So without a stringent regulation and codes and laws, it will be very hard for us to innovate because these laws, policies, and regulation would push every developer, even engineers, for example, to be more creative, to be more innovative, to raise the bar in terms of development, quality, and also energy efficiency of such infrastructure.
Very interesting. And sir, I wanted to go back to the challenges that you mentioned earlier, like right of way, permitting process. These hinder the development of the country's digital infrastructure. So, what policy frameworks must be in place to support, of course, innovation in for digital infrastructure ecosystem?
Yeah, first is the data sovereignty law. I think that will definitely push because if the government would mandate that the data that we process here in the country stays in the country, then that will definitely drive all of the businesses, including the public sector, to develop such infrastructure. Then second, of course, the codes that I mentioned a while ago. So we would, like for example, in Singapore, they have very strict regulation in terms of energy efficiency for the data centers. In fact, in Singapore, unless I'm mistaken, but this is what I know, they have a specific regulation for set points of temperatures inside the data centers. So this regulation compel all of the operators and developer to design a very efficient data center and also to operate the data center in the optimum level. Why the set point is very critical? Because the cooling system in the data center is the second highest energy consumer in that facility, next to the IT equipment. And that's the reason why energy efficiency codes would be very important, not only for optimization, but also drive innovation.
Yeah. And especially that power supply nowadays is scarce because of what's happening globally right now. But I'm glad that ASEC Christian talked about data localization because that relates to my next question on cybersecurity. We mentioned that there is a risk to exporting data overseas geopolitics wise because we don't know what servers abroad are doing with the data that we produce or the data that we have. So with cybersecurity threats becoming more frequent as we mentioned, digital systems handle sensitive information and especially financial transactions, what responsibilities do companies and governments play in protecting our digital infrastructure from evolving cyber threats?
So to better for the government to step in and protect these critical infrastructures that we have identified from emerging cyber threats. We already have we follow the NCSP that serves as our guide, the National Cybersecurity Plan, which ensures that or mandates that government must secure by design the systems that we will develop, and it cuts across the entire government. So apart from the processing, because government collects, stores, and processes most of the data of the Filipino citizens. So we must ensure that we must treat it with care and ensure that it is every data is of national interest. So with that, we follow by the rules and guidance set by the NCSP, and work with the private sector as well. And hopefully that would when that kicks in already, then we can ensure that we by digging and starting this digital infrastructure and deploying systems or ensuring and enabling new capabilities, it is designed to be secured by design. So yes.
Secured by design, for Sir Noriel, from the private sector's perspective, you have Converge has a lot of customers. So how do you secure from your data center to your network system? How do you ensure that these are ready as cyber threats evolve?
Yes. So from our perspective, as Converge, so cybersecurity and physical security is very critical, and this is the reason why, aside from making sure that we follow certain policies and regulations of the Philippines, we also follow and comply with international codes and best practices. And more importantly, we aim also to achieve certifications for such initiatives. This is mainly to ensure not only that we follow all of these regulations and best practices, but also we have a third party that will really look at and audit our practices as an extra layer of making sure that we are complying strictly with all of these standards and policies.
Got it, sir. And moving on to my next question, we know that building and maintaining large-scale digital infrastructure like data centers, they often require major investment. So what models of public-private partnerships can help accelerate the development of digital infrastructure?
Okay.
That's it.
So for the NDCP, that's of course for the connectivity part. So we encourage that the PPP model or the public-private partnership model, for compared to the traditional procuring, competitive bidding, and awarding it to the lowest bidder.
Yeah.
So instead of that, there is always a participation wherein the government will provide the infrastructure at first, and that's when the government will build infrastructure wherein the private sector can operate it and maintain it, to ensure that with that model, we can see to it that that infrastructure is being used properly and optimized for the next 15 years or longer, compared to the other traditional models that we have right now, wherein the contracts could only last for 3-5 years. So, and then there's no certainty of course continuing it, because we award it based on the lowest bidders. So in that case, and the NDCP as well ensures that the government will shoulder the 40% in terms of the investment in this in providing the digital infrastructure, but the private sector provides the other 60%. So that model, I think it's already chartered by the NDCP. It's very encouraged. So with that, because we see that of course there are, for the private sector perspective, I may believe that there are some far-flung areas that may not be feasible for them to even reach the communities there. But again, the government's mandate is to connect every Filipino, no Filipino left unconnected. So with that, that's when the government steps in. We can build the infrastructure. Then that's when we invite the private sector to participate and maintain it. And then, of course, it would it would increase the accessibility, the coverage, and of course, more participants in that sector now. Because if it's just the private sector choosing or selecting, of course, in the business, in their business, where to provide these services, they have to check how many. That's the density of the community, which is a great factor for profitability for them. But that's when, of course, with the new technologies right now, you mentioned already the low Earth orbit satellites that can be deployed that can easily be deployed in these far-flung areas. So with that technology, I guess with that mix, we are ensured that with the PPP and deploying other modalities, then we don't have to wait the time. We can already give them the digital infrastructure as soon as possible, and then provide them with a more permanent one in the future with the help of the PPP.
I also just have a follow-up question to that, because we know that the Philippines is very vulnerable to natural disasters and calamities, and our goal is to reach as many Filipinos as possible. But how do we address the fact that, again, because we are vulnerable to calamities, it might cause damage to digital infrastructure? So how do we ensure that despite these calamities, we are able to recover easily and still ensure that we maintain that stable digital connectivity across nationwide?
Okay, so first, digital infrastructure is not this is not a small investment to make. So when in the government specifically, before we invest or before we procure or disburse any funds from our national treasury to the digital infrastructures, we do stringent studies. You see, 2 years, 3 years, regardless of how long, to ensure that the location, where we will build the infrastructure will be resilient. And of course, when we start building it, we also design it in a way that it will be resilient to these calamities. With that, of course, as mentioned by Sir Noriel earlier, that in crafting this or in building this digital infrastructures, it would require, for example, right of way and permitting for you to evaluate that's to give the government the time to evaluate whether or not what you're building will be resilient, or is that not going to be it's going to cause, like, for example, if that's fiber, a lot of fiber cuts. If that's aerial, that will be, of course, fiber cuts as well in case a calamity hits. But there are other modalities right now that's available. That's why you have to choose whether it's best to do fiber or best to use satellites, for example, because satellites, you are not that vulnerable to, of course, these calamities. In terms, you don't expect any fiber cut from if you deploy satellites in these far-flung areas or anywhere. So, isn't that?
Got that. And moving on, of course, reports overseas and worldwide have always mentioned the growth potential of the Philippine digital economy. And we know that there's so much potential for the Philippine digital economy to grow, like the financial sector, the fintech sector, and then you also have a significant talent pool. But for now, what kinds of investments do you think should be explored to ensure the growth of the country's digital infrastructure to make it competitive across the region? So yeah, what kinds of investments are needed to explore more stringent digital infrastructure in the country?
That's a very hard question. But I think we would need to invest more, not only in fiber, not only in subsea cables, but also in data centers and platforms. So I think these are the main investment that every private sector and the government should also look at. Right now, there are only few data centers in the Philippines compared to other nations, right? So if you look at other nations, they have large capacities of data center. In the Philippines, yes, we already have some capacities, but I believe once the data sovereignty law has been passed and come into play, uh, we may not be prepared enough to cater all of this.
Yes.
Uh,
Very-
may so that's the reason why for Converge we've took the initiative to start developing the national digital infrastructure, but it is just the start. So we're just scratching the surface, and I believe there's more to be developed. For example, AI. We're still far behind AI race. We don't have AI factories yet in the Philippines. Although there's some players that has started looking at preparing for this type of boom in the Philippines, but we're not yet there. So right now, the most important thing is for us to be ready and be prepared. So I believe data center investment would definitely be one of the major focus in terms of infrastructure development that the Philippines should really consider.
From the government side, Asek?
Well, in terms of the investment, we have to keep in mind that why are we investing in the first
Yes.
place, right? So it's really to uplift every why host here? You can already perform these services. You can already host and store your data abroad, offshore. What's the main in choosing what to invest on, and why are we investing in digital infrastructures here in the Philippines, and why are we focusing on hosting our own data here in the Philippines? You have to think of the digital jobs, the economic impact that these infrastructures could create. So we always say that in terms of the capability of scaling up the economic impact for the life of every Filipino, of every regular Filipino out there, that when they use these technologies, when they use the infrastructure that the systems that these infrastructures enabled, then the potential is limitless. It's
Yes.
exponential. So that's the first in terms of thinking as to why to invest in the first place. We have to keep in mind what is the impact to the to the lives of the Filipinos, and impact to the country, and because we have the potential. Right now, we would talk about the AI of CAM. We're developing the AI infrastructure master plan. So because we believe that the Philippines is primed already to become the hub for MSMEs, for these ASEAN, that these AI services. So that would not just of course improve the lives of the Filipinos, but it would create more jobs, and it would, of course, the Philippines will be the gateway because of various factors apart from the in order to decide on building the AI infrastructure here, we think about the talent pool, we think about the energy, we think about the connectivity. So right now, I think connectivity-wise, we're primed already.
Yes.
So, and then projections or studies have shown that this could really produce, because we're spending 12 to 20 billion dollars for paying for these services offshore. So what if that we become that host now for the region? So it would really not just improve, it would really meet the why are we investing in the first place? It's the returns
Yeah.
of these investments.
I do agree with the ASET. And this is why we really need to focus on repatriating our data. I mean, that's an instant win to the Philippines. Why? So imagine you're spending 12 to 20 billion pesos a year for offshore data processing and storing. So if you repatriate all your data here in the Philippines, that amount of money that you pay offshore is spent inside the Philippine economy. So that's already an instant win. And when you start when this law start coming into play, then a lot of investors comes in because they will be forced to come in. Right now, they are not forced to come in because they're residing outside. They get the data from us, no problem. But when we start implementing this data sovereignty law, then many investors also will start thinking of building their own data center. And this is why majority of the countries that has data sovereignty law, they are very prosperous in terms of data center industry, digital infrastructure industry because of this. So imagine the likes of Google, Meta, hyperscalers, they would definitely come in and invest more. And that will have a very significant impact to many of the Filipinos because now jobs comes in because of all of these investments from different verticals and sectors, maybe it in construction, maybe it in financial, hospitalities, and also in healthcare and so on. No? So I believe that if we really focus on having this law and policies, investment focus on technology right now, it will create significant impact to many of the Filipinos. And investment in digital economy is, I believe, the way to the future.
Yes, because right now we're operating beyond borders, I think. So we're no longer divided by our from our neighbors in our region, but we're serving as that's why we want to serve as the gateway now to connect these the west to the east, and then within the ASEAN region, we want to become the heart wherein they're looking for the new place. So they're looking for a new place wherein they can of course build the data centers, build AI infrastructures, and that's why Philippines is now primed because of we already have the connectivity, we already have other requirements for these digital infrastructures to make sense or become feasible. And so that's why we have to start as soon as possible. That's my personal view on that one, because the studies have shown that the impact to the lives could be felt immediately, and it would really, of course, not the return is not just monetary. It's the enablement of these Filipinos to of course you would want to see MSMEs or SMEs use these services, use this AI that were previously, of course, not that very accessible to them before. So right now we'll be primed. So because hyperscalers will come in, talent will flood the country, and of course, it would really help our economy.
Got that. Now, to close our episode, I just wanted to get like maybe a closing statement just to answer this brief question. How do you envision the Philippines digital infrastructure ecosystem? What are your hopes or the goals or hopes and goals maybe for the country's digital infrastructure ecosystem for data centers also in particular, Sir Noriel?
Yeah, I think for us, we have a very good future. That's what I see in the Philippines. As Asaf mentioned, we are already primed. We are in a very, very good position, and we have also a lot of advantages geographically. And to me, I believe that we will have a very good future ahead of us. Thank goodness that we have a lot of visionary leaders here in the Philippines who would really take the next step to move this forward. That includes our CEO, Boss Dennis. So along with him, a very supportive stakeholders throughout the industry and including our government, especially the ICT. So I believe it's really a good future ahead of us.
All right. To close, ask a question.
So first, for the government, the policies will be in place. They are already in place, but we are going to come out with more policies to ensure that sufficient guardrails are in place, but that policy should not hinder innovation. So we also have a public-private partnership, and that is being welcomed already in the NDCP, in various policies. It is being encouraged already. So with that, we envision that in the near future, we can already experience the returns from these investments in digital infrastructure, and we see a positive, like a bright future for the Philippines. With this, as mentioned, the Philippines is already primed for this digital infrastructure, and this time with sufficient guardrails and plans that we follow, we are sure that this will really lead to the right direction, and we won't get lost in our ways.
Yes, and we hope to see the ROI of the investments of the government and the private sector in the near future. Again, Sir Noriel and Asik Christian, thank you so much for giving your time and sharing your insights for our podcast at BusinessWorld. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noriel and Asik Christian, for sharing your time and expertise with us today. Hopefully, our viewers and listeners will now have a better grasp as to why it matters for our country to have its own digital infrastructure. If this is your first time to view this podcast series, check out our very first episode where we talked to Sir James Mendoza of Converge Studios and attorney Jose Bellarmino II about why the Philippines needs its very own cloud to store its data, rather than sharing space from foreign services. Through this series, Converge seeks to help businesses kickstart their journey with cloud technology. If you have questions about what cloud services Converge has in store, email Converge Global Business via globalbusiness@convergeict.com. You may also visit their LinkedIn page at www.linkedin.com/company/Converge Global Business. Once again, this is Beatrice Cruz, multimedia reporter from BusinessWorld, and this is Where the Digital World Converges. Conversations on Cloud, brought to you by BusinessWorld B-Side and Converge. Thank you for your time and see you on the next episode.
From the heart of Southeast Asia, Converge is bringing the Philippines to the global stage. As one of the region's pioneers in fiber technology, we build networks that enrich everyday life and empower enterprises to move faster, reach further, and innovate without limits. Our fully redundant, globally certified carrier Ethernet core, multi-homed IP network, and diverse last-mile technologies deliver high-grade, always-on connectivity wherever it's needed. With major investments in Bifrost and CH2X, we're expanding the Philippines' reach, connecting enterprises, public sector, carriers, and hyperscalers to the world's largest markets with speed and reliability. Beyond connectivity, Converge delivers managed Wi-Fi, intelligent surveillance and IoT, SD-WAN, content solutions, and world-class data center solutions. And for the next era of enterprise solutions, cloud, AI, and cybersecurity, designed to future-proof your organization. From fiber to future, this is where technology and humanity converge. Let's build what's next. Connect with us today